Do you experience imposter syndrome? Of course you do. We all do.
Horses can help us overcome it. That's next on the Leading with Instinct podcast.
This is the Leading with Instinct podcast, focusing on intuitive leadership and fostering deep team connections through equine experiential leadership development and coaching. Brought to you by KatieTheCoach.com and the Collaboration Partners. Now, here's your hosts, Katie Navarra-Bradley and Ginny Telego.
All right, welcome back to Leading with Instinct, where we explore how we can lead with more authenticity, clarity, and connection, and what horses can teach us about the way that we show up as leaders. Well, hi, Katie. How are you today?
Hi, Ginny. I'm well. We are having the first big snow of the year in upstate New York. How are you?
I'm doing well. We had our first snow out here in Colorado, for me, where I am in Southwest Colorado. We had our first snow on Sunday night. It was only just like 2 inches of snow that we had. and then the sun was out all day yesterday, so it was really nice out. And the snow evaporates out here where I am because I'm in the high desert. So it doesn't really melt and then get muddy. It just evaporates into the air. And so that's really fascinating for me to watch. But we still have some snow, but today it's already like 45 degrees today. So it's going to be gone pretty soon. But it was nice. It was pretty. And the snow-capped mountains, I just love the snow-capped mountains. It really just looks so pretty. And I had this beautiful view of Pikes Peak yesterday when I went up to Colorado Springs. So I'm enjoying it. But yeah, I saw you guys were getting quite a bit of snow.
Yes, you've had some beautiful pictures.
Yeah, the sun is so nice, makes such a difference out here. So yeah, we're enjoying that. And, but I'm looking forward to our conversation today because it's something that I know you and I have both experienced ourselves. We've talked about this a lot in different conversations we've had. And it's something that we have the privilege of helping our clients move past when they come to work with us with the horses. So, Katie, why don't you go ahead and get us started and tell our listeners a little bit about what we're going to talk about?
Yeah, so this is definitely something we have both talked about. And so today we're going to talk about imposter syndrome. Something that I think that we are all very familiar with. And from our coaching experience, it's something that we hear from really leaders across all levels. I think a lot of people assume that it's only, entry level or emerging leaders. But as we talk about today, we're going to find that leaders at every level in their career experience this. And it's not that they have a lack of skill or a lack of knowledge. It's this lack of confidence, whether it's in a specific situation or, over an extended period of time. And it's something that horses are specifically well suited to help us all move past.
Yeah, for sure. And as our listeners know, Katie and I like to include some data and research in these conversations. And so we're going to share a little bit of that because the data is actually pretty fascinating around this. And I found it to be pretty validating, Katie, when we were preparing for this and I started, doing some research and exploring, finding articles, journal articles about this. And there's been a ton of research around this for quite a while. And so it's not something that we're just making up and that we're saying, oh, these people have a lack of confidence. It's very real. And I think that our listeners are going to find some of that data very interesting as well. And if they are experiencing this or they have experienced it periodically, which I think we all do to some extent, I'm hoping that the data will also help people feel like they're not completely alone.
Absolutely. As I was preparing for today and doing some research, I found a survey that Korn Ferry, a very large HR consulting group, released last year. And it's in their Global Insights report. And they found that imposter feelings are really widespread at work. Believe it or not, 71% of CEOs say that they also experience symptoms of imposter syndrome in their role. And I know that, at least I always think, they're at that level of work, all that years of experience, and they have it all together. But they're like just the rest of us. And, sometimes uncertainty or low confidence around a certain decision or situation can really impact them.
Yeah.
And that same survey said, also had other statistics about how it affects like middle managers or senior leaders at about 65%, and then your entry level leaders around 45-50%. So it really is widespread across every level of our organizations.
Yeah, and wow, I just when I read that, I was like, wow, 71% of US CEOs experiencing imposter syndrome. I think that's a really powerful insight, right? And it can be easy to assume that the people who are in these CEO roles don't have this going on. So now you add in all the other things, right? They are responsible for creating strategy, navigating the very, very fast moving uncertainty that is continuing to happen. And so when you think about they're trying to do all of those things, and in the midst they're questioning themselves, I think that was just such an interesting thing to think about. And then knowing that now that's widespread across the organization. From a talent development perspective, I think this is important to be thinking about as well, because if you have people from your senior level all the way down into your frontline supervisors who are experiencing just lack of confidence in themselves as a leader, maybe it's imposter syndrome, or we're going to talk about a reframing of that later. But it oftentimes is related to a fear of failure, a fear of rejection. Those seem to be sort of the top things that I hear from my clients when we're talking about these things. But gosh, how is that impacting the organizations when you have a lot of people who are in leadership roles in particular who are experiencing these things? And I mean, I think about it for the mid-level people from the perspective of, they're the middle, right? They're the sandwich, the sandwich group there, that they're having this weight from above, right? Because they're getting information given to them from the senior level leaders to execute strategy. And then they have expectations from the people that they're leading. And you add all those things in, it is a lot of pressure. You want to do things right. I totally can relate to it. I have experienced this throughout my professional career. I started being in leadership roles pretty early on in my professional career, actually in college, and I can think very easily about all the times where I was having these thought processes of, oh, do I even know what I'm doing? Why did they put me in this role? I don't know what I'm doing. What if I fail? What if I let, all the things that we start catastrophizing about. But I still experience it now, even with, the things that I'm doing now, traveling globally to work with mid to senior level leaders from global companies. And I'm leading teams, other teams of facilitators to travel to these countries to go and work with leaders. The thoughts still come into my mind. And so, I just want our listeners to know that this isn't something, it's not something wrong with you if you experience these thoughts. Everybody's having them in some way, in some manner. And particularly as you start being put into roles where you have more responsibility, there's more expectation of you, it's really easy for our brains to go into this mode of thinking, what are you doing? You don't know what you're doing. You shouldn't be here. So those are the things we're going to talk about, kind of, what does this look like? And also give people, as we always do, some things that they can take away. So Katie, so what are some other things that leaders are talking about with this?
Yes, and to your point, Ginny, I also have continuously had that imposter syndrome. I know you've helped me through some of those situations as well. The first time we actually met in person, I believe we were talking about that because a Fortune 50 company, I guess, if I had to say it that way, had hired me to come out and do an equine leadership program with them. And I thought, who am I to be giving this to these people? So it happens to all of us at some point, even if we're very confident throughout the year. A lot of the things that I hear leaders saying echo what you're saying, and they're also really unsure about making the right decisions. They want to do the right thing for their teams, their employees, their organization. There's also that fear of failing publicly. With the writing clients that I work with, a number of them are CEOs or very successful startup founders who have sold businesses. And the first thing they say to me is, everybody tells me I should write a book, but who really wants to hear what I have to say? And I'm thinking,
I can relate to that.
yeah. And I'm thinking, all of the things that I know about you through our other interactions, like you have so much expertise and wisdom to share. There's also this overwhelm of conflicting demands. You mentioned our middle managers that are stuck, in between the senior leaders and the people that they're leading. And I think we're all, to some extent, I'll say this, just trying to prove ourselves. And we don't want anybody to find out that maybe we doubt ourselves,
Yes,
to actually admit that.
Right. Oh my gosh. I can't tell you how many times I've been on an airplane going someplace to go, work with senior level leaders. And I'm on the airplane, so I can't escape. I can't go anywhere. I'm stuck there in my seat with just my thoughts. And, and I'm thinking that I'm like, oh my gosh, what if somebody finds out that I don't really know what I'm doing? And it can be so easy for those thoughts to start consuming us. And, when we get talking later, I'm going to share a tool that I use for myself when those intrusive thoughts start coming in. But yeah, I think, when we talk about how do these things impact our leadership, right? What's real about this? And so one of the things we know is that leaders who are experiencing imposter thoughts, especially when they're driven by fear of failure, I think that to me is the big thing that I hear, and I know for myself and in the conversations I have with my clients. When that's happening, we're more likely to hesitate. We second guess ourselves. We might avoid decision making because we don't want to fail, or we don't want to be found out. And this is the thing about horses, right? Horses make those patterns visible very quickly in a non-judgmental way. And I think one of the reasons that I love having horses as my co-facilitators is because how quickly they pick up on leader confidence. They don't pick up on bravado. Bravado means nothing to them, right? They do not like command and control energy. They just like real embodied confidence. And that takes a shift in our thinking, right? Embodied confidence means what you're doing and what you're thinking are in alignment. This idea of congruence that we talk about, right? I mean, don't you think that that's a big part of it?
It is absolutely a big part of it. I see it when leaders step into the arena, even with a small amount of internal doubt, or even with my own horses, right? They might stop, disconnect from us, or hesitate, or take over our own space completely. One of my most favorite things that we do around here playing with our horses is to see how much they will follow us around without any attachment to us with a halter or lead. And that can really show their confidence in us as leaders, even though we're just having fun doing daily chores, right? But we see that also play out for clients when they are coming and looking for some guidance on areas to grow in their leadership styles.
Yeah. And I mean, I've worked with so many leaders around the world, even just this year. My goodness, I've worked with a lot of leaders around the world this year. And they're challenged in different ways with confidence, right? It may not be something that is a really easy thing to see externally. That how sometimes you can see someone's body language, they're very clearly lacking some confidence. But oftentimes it's not that easy to see, right? Because as humans, we are really good at masking. We're very good at looking confident, but not feeling confident. But the horses reveal that. But it's very frustrating. This is the thing I think I've noticed a lot for my clients, and why I have a heart for this is it's really frustrating for people who are in leadership roles to be experiencing some imposter thinking, lack of confidence, because they know they're capable, right? They wouldn't be in the leadership role if they weren't capable. And the thing is other people have determined that they're capable.
Right.
right? I mean, in organizations anyway, it's that, you're not put into a leadership role most generally unless you have demonstrated that you have the ability to be in the leadership role. But, I was trying to think of like to share a story of a client. But as I was doing that, I thought, wow, there's a commonality that I've had with a lot of clients having the same experience, no matter where I am. And on more than one occasion, I've had a client who's in a leadership role and they're hesitant to even get close to the horse to say hello, because that's the first thing we do. After we do our safety demo, then we invite the clients to actually come and say hello to the horse so they have a chance to step up and, get close to the horse to overcome, whatever thoughts they're having about the horses. And oftentimes, they'll get about 6 feet away and they just stop. And they'll say, I'm good here. And I'm okay with that. I'm like, okay, all right. Well, so what's going on for you right now? Like, right, I want to start getting them to notice what they're thinking and what they're feeling in their body. And I would say almost all the time when I ask that question, they will respond with something like, they're anxious because they don't have any context for the situation. So I'm asking them to step into real uncertainty, right? Which is something that they're having to do on a daily basis in their roles. Now, though, in this situation, they just stop, and this idea of not having context for what they're about to step into is really interesting. And so, I mean, for me, with the neuroscience thing, I understand what's happening in their brain. Because their brain is looking for certainty, right? So as they're stepping up to the horse, their brain is is going through the filing. It's like Googling in their brain for some information to help them feel more certain about what they're doing. And when they can't find that, their brain says, I don't know, this might not be safe. And so, I immediately want to start making this relevant for them. So before they've even stepped any closer to the horse, I ask them, where else does it show up in your work that you don't step into opportunity because you don't have context for it? In that moment, I see everything start to happen. and they'll say, oh gosh, that happens all the time. And a lot of the leaders I'm working with are responsible for creating strategy for their organizations. Well, strategy means that you have to be willing to be innovative and think about going in a direction that you don't know where you're going, right? It's easy to create a strategy based on the past and information that you already know. And so as soon as I start to make that relevant, now they start thinking about, oh, yeah, they already start to recognize that it's a pattern, for them. But then as I continue to inquire with them, I'm watching the horse really closely for body language that indicates a shift happening in the client's thinking. And it's usually really subtle. The horse might slightly lift their head or lower their head. They might move away or toward the client, even just slightly shifting their body. The horse might start licking and chewing, which is a sign that the horse is releasing some kind of thought, or there's a stress happening that they're releasing for the client. And usually that's because the client has become aware of something and the client is going, oh, yeah. And so this is where I'm able to start to explore with the client, what are the things that prevent them from exploring uncertainty? And this is when they will oftentimes they'll move towards the horse by this time. They're starting to be more willing to at least take a couple steps forward. I don't ever force people. I let them go at their own pace. But this is where we start to uncover that there's a fear of rejection, particularly with the horse. Like the reason they don't want to come up to say hello to the horse is they have a fear of the horse not liking them, which is non-existent because horses don't like or dislike us. They like or dislike what we're doing or how we're doing it. There's also a fear of failure, right? They're concerned that they're not going to do it right. So all of those things are coming into play in their mind, and it's impacting their ability to feel confident. And so what's really fascinating with all of these clients that I started thinking about the commonality of this experience is the moment that they acknowledge it out loud, what they actually say, I have a real fear of failure. That's why I don't step into uncertainty in my work, right? They're already making the connection. And the moment that they speak it out loud, the horse responds, and the horse either will come towards them, the horse might drop their head as a sign of relaxation, the horse starts to lick or chew. It's a relief for my clients to be actually able to speak their truth of what it is that is causing them to have imposter thinking or to not step into uncertainty. And it's so incredibly powerful. And when they speak their truth and the horse comes towards them, every single time it happens, the clients are just so amazed at how being in alignment with themselves and acknowledging what they're thinking and experiencing, what that does for them. Because now they're actually able to shift and they step into leading and they become more confident that they're not worried about the not knowing. They're not worried about the uncertainty of whether they're going to be able to get the horse to move where they need it to go. And so, I think one of the things that comes up a lot in our follow-up conversation that we have about the experience is they start to understand that strategy and innovation can't happen if leaders are reluctant to step into uncertainty. And so it was kind of interesting for me, Katie, to reflect on this and realize, I've probably worked with hundreds of clients who've had this exact experience. So it was really interesting.
It is really interesting. And, hearing you talk about that reminded me of one of my very first programs that I did. It was for a group of local business owners, very successful business owners. They formed a little mastermind group that they met monthly. And so one of their monthly outings was to come and work with the horses and I. And I always like to start with, who are you? What is your background? Because a lot of these people I don't know. And what kind of goals would you like to get out of the day? Well, the second person to introduce themselves told me that they had been a leadership consultant, a Sandler sales coach for decades. As you can imagine, the first thought that went through my head as I'm leading this was an expletive that I won't drop on the podcast. But what am I going to teach this individual in this program?
Right.
And so what was really interesting through that day is 3 things actually happened for 3 people in the workshop, including myself. So for myself, to your point, the horses know exactly what needs to happen in the moment. They command so much extra space that they made my job easy. I could see what was occurring with each individual, and they picked up the slack and carried the imposter syndrome for me. One of the women in the group who was incredibly confident coming into the arena, had no problem approaching a horse, but when we got to an activity where we asked them to lead the horses, all of a sudden she froze. The horse wouldn't move, she froze, and with her permission, we sort of dug into that and came to the same conclusion that you have with some of the clients you've worked with. When they get into that big decision moment, they start questioning, well, who am I to be proposing or having a proposal to be the one to work on this project for clients? How can I, leverage my expertise to be good at this? Mm-hmm. And so we actually went into a pretty detailed facilitation around that. And she ended up taking some of the lessons from the horse back into her business after that.
Yeah.
And then what I found really interesting is I got to know this leadership coach that I mentioned very well after that event. We actually have hosted some programs together and we're in several groups together as well. And they said to me, I've done a lot of professional development in my life, but if I hadn't have come, or the horses helped me see how I truly lead. Even though I knew it, I got to see it. Mm-hmm. And I would have missed an important part of my professional development if I hadn't come.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, coming from somebody who really is dedicated to professional development and growth. I think we all are, but to some people are even more than others. And to have someone like that be able to see how their leadership style that they have worked on and cultivated play out in real time was pretty fascinating. And the horses just really do that for us. And what I love about it is when they're working with the horses aren't judging them, right? They're just responding to what is true in the moment. That mismatch, like you said, that congruence between the external behavior and what we're feeling inside. And when this happens in these moments, they align with a lot of the research that's out there. I found a study by an MIT Sloan professor and researcher who uses the term imposter thoughts at work instead of imposter syndrome. And she also broke down what I think is very interesting is that what she calls imposter phenomenon is often portrayed in literature as permanent,
Right.
inherent in everything, and always negative. But what she and her research colleagues have found is that there's really several myths around that. People can break through imposter syndrome. It's not something that we live with all the time. And I really don't think that that's surprising, right? You and I have each gone through imposter syndrome at several points, but it's not consuming us day to day.
Right.
And I think that that's widely true for a lot of folks as well. And their research also, interestingly to me, said that there might be moments when having these imposter thoughts might actually help us perform better at work because we want to overcompensate, work harder, learn more so that we can move past that self-perceived incompetence.
Yeah, I thought that was super interesting to read. And I really like the reframing of imposter syndrome to imposter thoughts and talking about the idea. 'Cause syndrome to me sounds like something that can't be overcome, right? Maybe you can temporarily relieve the symptoms of it, but ultimately you can't overcome it. Whereas the imposter thoughts, right? Thoughts are definitely something that we can manage and shift. And so that actually, I think when you think about it from that perspective, that's empowering. Because now if I'm starting to say to myself, okay, I'm having some imposter thoughts. Okay, what do I need to do? And I think, so we're going to talk about that a little bit. But yeah, so Katie, how do leaders begin to build more genuine confidence that's not just performative confidence, right? Which is the fake it till you make it, but the grounded kind that both people and horses will respond to?
That's a great question, Ginny. And I think the first step is really to being able to name what's true and being self-aware. Research shows that imposter syndrome these imposter feelings amplify when leaders or we hide our doubts.
Yes.
And horses will show us that too. They sense that incongruence. And, this past summer we sent our young horse Winston to a colt starter in New Jersey. And we chatted a lot about a lack of confidence, these imposter thoughts I was experiencing with another horse that we own. And the colt starter, which I love because he really digs into the mind workings of horses and humans.
Yeah.
He suggested reading this book, Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. And what Maltz popularized was this concept of self-image. He really came at it from a perspective of what people went through after having transformative plastic surgery on their face and how they could not see themselves as beautiful even after the transformation. But it was this whole how we picture ourselves in this self-image. And literally in the first 10 minutes of the audiobook, he talked about visualizing ourselves succeeding in the moment that we're struggling with in a previous encounter. And that to me flipped the switch immediately. I remembered with this other horse I'd been struggling with that we had had many successful moments in tough environments. And so being able to pull that forward is like, oh, I can do this. I can do hard things and we can work through this. So one of the things that I suggest leaders ask themselves is, what's a previous success that you can visualize when you're experiencing self-doubt that you can lean back on and help pull you forward through the next moment.
Yeah, and I love that because there's actually neuroscience around that of when your brain is making predictions that aren't helpful to stop yourself and go back to think about a time where you were in a similar situation and you succeeded, right? You did something that worked. the other thing that I'll share with people, so one of the things that I do when I start having imposter thoughts is I stop for a moment and I recognize, okay, what's the belief I'm having right now about myself? And if that belief is that, I know I'm having this belief right now that I'm not really skilled to be doing what I'm doing, right? But what I've learned is to stop the moment that I have that belief and allow myself to either validate or invalidate it. Because there are times when I don't know, I'm stepping into something and I don't know what I'm doing. But when it comes to my work, I know what I'm doing. And so I stop myself and I say, okay, I'm having this belief right now, but what do I know to be true? And what I know to be true is that the people hiring me wouldn't be hiring me if they did not believe that I'm capable of doing what they're paying me to do. And the moment that I shift that, the moment that I stop that imposter thought from being allowed to continue and catastrophize, I go, well, yeah, these people would not be hiring me to fly to Brazil to work with these leaders from this global company if I wasn't capable. So this whole little voice over here that's saying, you're not capable, you don't think you are. I'm just like, no, you need to go take a vacation right now, because what I know to be true is this. And I think that's really powerful. And we can do that anytime. We can do it when we're sitting in a meeting. We can do it when we're in the car. We can do it when we're, stepping into a situation, a conversation. It's really something, and nobody else needs to know that you're doing it, right? It's not something that's visible to everyone.
I've even worked with clients through this, and I ask them to give it a name.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's not just this little thing on their shoulder. It's a name they come up with that's meaningful to them.
Yeah.
And that they can go back to and say, okay, this is insert name. We need to take a hike. And that helps make it more real and stick.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. What about, Katie, a lot of times we talk about with this work with the horses about sort of paying attention to our body. So what are some things that people can do physically to physically feel more confident?
We do talk about this all the time. You mentioned it earlier that sometimes we can outwardly see when somebody is not confident in their posture. So thinking about what our posture is reflecting to us if we aren't able to recognize it in the moment. Also pausing and taking that breath when you feel those thoughts coming through your head. Also thinking about what is the energy that we're projecting to the horses, to those around us. We've talked a lot about how horses respond to how we feel, and not just about how we treat them or how we look. People also respond to that too. And in episode 10, we talked about how the easiest way to get rid of stress is to pass it off to someone else. So my suggestion, what I've tried to do when I get stressful recently, is to take that deep breath, find a way to deal with it before passing it on to the next person.
Yeah, that is important. I really started to do that a lot when I'm in different situations, whether I'm out with clients or I'm in a meeting, even Zoom meetings where I am sensing someone's stress is starting to come up, and I will take a breath, and it really is something. We do have the ability to help regulate other people. And I think that's a great way to build confidence in ourselves when we can do that. I know another thing is this idea of, when we aren't clear on expectations for ourselves, that can create a lot of anxiety, right? Which can lead to lack of confidence because you start making up stories, right? In the absence of information, we make up stories. And so, we talked about clarity of expectations back in episode 6, and that research consistently shows that unclear or conflicting expectations create leader anxiety and can decrease confidence. So another action that our listeners can take is, when you start to recognize that maybe some of your confidence, issues that you're not feeling confident are related to just that you don't have clarity of the expectations, is to just ask, so what does success look like in the next 30 days, right? Asking either the person that you report to or asking your team, and try to get some clarity around that. I actually had this just happen yesterday when I was in a meeting with a team I'm working on a project with, and there was a lot of, well, we need to do this and this and this, and I don't know if I'm going to have time to do this. And I just said, what's one thing we can all do in the next 2 weeks to move something forward? And it was amazing because it completely, like, the energy changed, and then it was like, oh, okay, this is something we can do in the next 2 weeks, like low-hanging fruit. But then everyone was clear on the expectation, right? There wasn't an ambiguity around it. And so this simple clarity of things can really increase confidence in your leadership. And then that just continues to lead to more self-confidence.
I love that. That's a great point. The other thing that we can do this as leaders of an organization, and we can also do this on an individual level, is to find support and community.
Yes.
So, from an organization level, there are studies that have shown that when an employee or a team feels that there is support, it can help them actually reduce imposter syndrome or these imposter feelings. And one study in particular suggests, creating a culture where people feel comfortable talking about having these thoughts. It takes away the stigma associated with them, and it can also really promote authenticity so that everybody feels comfortable and feels empowered to make some innovative, even smart mistakes. They know that they're not going to be criticized when it's done with the right intentions. And, it's also interesting. This is something I've actually written about a couple of times in the last few years, is this concept of having a best friend at work. And there have been multiple surveys, studies on how when you find a friend at work, it can improve your happiness, your efficiency, and increase innovation around the work that you're doing and around those that you're with. And that's very different than just having a friendship with a colleague or a coworker. It's really developing a deep friendship that may even transcend if you leave the company, they leave the company. But it's just that sense of not being alone. I think we've talked about that too. The CDC has claimed that the loneliness is an epidemic post-COVID, and feelings of loneliness can feel very isolating. So when we find ways to connect the organization to one another, we find someone to connect at work, that helps build our confidence. And when our confidence grows, we stop navigating things alone, and the organization can go even further than it might have before.
Yes. And Katie, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate having you as part of my community. It does make a difference, and it is great to have somebody that you can talk to when you're having some of these imposter thoughts, or you're questioning your confidence. When you have somebody that you can talk to who you trust, right? That you can be a little bit vulnerable with. And so I just want to say how much I appreciate having you as part of my community, and it does make a difference to have that around you.
Well, thank you, Ginny. And, I appreciate it as well. I think I'm higher on the credit side. I come to you all of the time. I need to get you to, I need to start repaying some of that. But no, to your point, having colleagues, like the relationship that we have, I have an individual that I consider a mentor who is incredibly generous with just thoughts or a place to share concerns. Really goes a long ways. Not only really at any level of leadership within an organization, but especially when you're running your own business as a solopreneur.
Yes.
It's very easy to get into your head and not have all the answers.
Yes, I know. I think that's really powerful. And so those are great actions. Thank you for sharing those, Katie. And I hope that those things are helpful to you as our listeners. Confidence isn't something that leaders earn by achieving more. It's a confidence and achieving are not something that just automatically go together. confidence is something that we cultivate by being aligned internally and externally. It's about us recognizing when we're having some of those thoughts of, I don't want to fail, and so I don't want to make a decision, and then realizing that that's impacting our confidence. And just going back to, horses give us this opportunity to receive non-judgmental feedback, to see exactly where that alignment is missing. And then also where it's emerging. And I think this is so important, and which is one of the things I know, Katie, you love as much as I do about this, that moment when our clients recognize their confidence is actually emerging and they start walking and the horse follows them. They're able to navigate through, maybe some type of little, obstacle course that they've created. And when we see the physical shift, we see people's posture change, we know their breathing changes, you see their facial expressions change, all of those things. And so it's so important to recognize that as well, right? That when our confidence is coming out and we're finding it. And so if you are an emerging leader who's struggling with doubt, or you're supporting people who are stepping into bigger roles, or if you're a senior leader who is sometimes experiencing these things, this work on your confidence and recognizing what's underneath it, it really matters. Your presence matters to the people around you, and the horses will meet you exactly where you are and provide an opportunity to move where you want to be with your confidence. So this has been a great conversation, Katie. Thank you so much for engaging in this and bringing all of these things to light.
Yes, thank you for another great conversation, Ginny. And thank you to all of our listeners for joining us for another episode of Leading with Instinct. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with a colleague that is stepping into their leadership role. And as we enter the holiday seasons, stay grounded, stay connected, and always lead with instinct.
Awesome. Happy holidays, Katie.
Happy holidays, Ginny.
This has been the Leading with Instinct podcast, focusing on intuitive leadership and fostering deep team connections through equine experiential leadership development and coaching. The Leading with Instinct podcast is brought to you in partnership with the Collaboration Partners, harnessing the collective human potential in organizations since 2009, providing equine experiential learning for lasting change. Get in touch at thecollaborationpartners.com and by katiethecoach.com, helping entrepreneurs and business leaders reset, reconnect, and reframe to live their best professional and personal lives. Visit katiethecoach.com for more information. For more information about equine experiential development and coaching and the Leading with Instinct podcast, visit www.leadingwithinstinct.com. The Leading with Instinct podcast is available at leadingwithinstinct.com, on the Leading with Instinct YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Subscribe today, and thank you for listening to the Leading with Instinct podcast.